We need to clear something up. Crying is not a character flaw. Crying is not a sign of weakness. The internet tries to convince us that being healed means that we're calm and emotionally balanced 24/7. There are assumptions that get thrown out, such as if you still cry, you're not healed. Emotionally mature people don't get triggered, and strong women don't break down. Today, we are discussing the signs that you are emotionally mature, even if you still cry. Full disclosure, I was crying about 2 hours ago before I filmed this episode. So you're not alone. Let's get into it. Just a friendly reminder, I'm not a therapist, psychologist, or expert in human behavior. This is a judgment-free assumption checking zone. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Let's talk about what emotional maturity actually is. These are not formal definitions whatsoever. Self-awareness is definitely one. Emotional regulation and responsibility for your reactions. Those are really three key pieces to emotional maturity. And 100%, this conversation is definitely just another learning process and just another form of growth that people go through. This is not something that you're meant to just wake up one day and all of a sudden you're emotionally mature. For me personally, I found that I had to go through a lot of unfortunate incidents, we'll call them, for me to actually start to even understand how to kind of, if we say, level up in emotional maturity. Sometimes now, if a certain situation happens, I do actually realize for a moment, wow, I'm handling this much better than I would have in the past. And again, that's on growth. Even if it's slow growth, you're still getting somewhere. Emotional maturity does not necessarily mean that it's emotional numbness. So you don't have to numb your emotions. You can still feel your emotions. One of my favorite collections at my small business is the Mental Health Matters collection that includes the phrase, "It's okay to feel your feelings." There's a lot that still comes out on the internet about feeling like we have to keep things inside, especially, yes, it is definitely geared towards women in certain aspects. We could probably do a whole episode on that, but we're not doing that today. Today is just the general topic of emotional maturity, but it doesn't mean that you're not allowed to feel anything anymore. You're still going to feel it. It's just how you handle it may be different than how you would have handled it in the past, or maybe you're just overall feeling a lot more confident about how you handle your emotions. Something for me that made a big difference is that now I take a breather before I send a text. Now I take a breather before I react because I know that I need to take a deep breath and I know that I need to kind of give it a second, maybe distract myself with something else, and then come back to the topic before I either respond to it or before I have a reaction to it. And then I figure out how to handle it, which that's much better than in the past. And I'm a big believer in you need to forgive yourself in the past for sure, regardless of what it was. I think that it can be hard to continue on your growth journey if you don't acknowledge your past. It doesn't mean you have to love everything about it, but it's, again, just part of the whole growth journey. So you don't have to be numb about your feelings. It's just about growth. I kind of just touched on this a bit. Another key piece of emotional maturity is to pause between feeling and reacting. For me, yes, I did try therapy. I had tried it on, we won't discuss it, an app a while ago. I did not have a great experience, so I stopped completely. But then I did try recently in person, and I think that's something that has helped me with that was I knew that if something happened throughout the week, something that maybe in the past like would have completely wrecked my entire week, I now all of a sudden I had this space where I could be like, okay, I can table this until my next session. And that actually helped me to be able to control my reactions overall. And then sometimes by the time I got to my session, it wouldn't even be bothering me anymore. Let's just like give an example, right? Something happens on a Sunday, I'm going to table it until Wednesday. By the time Wednesday arrives, maybe it's still bothering me, but maybe it's not bothering me enough that I even feel like I need to bring it up anymore. So that for me has been a huge benefit in therapy. Also, stay humble. You know who you are because my therapist knows all about you. I think that, and again, joining therapy is a complete personal decision. To start it, to participate in it, that is like completely 100% a personal decision. And I'm not pushing it. I think that if you want to try it, you could try it. If you don't, that's okay too. But for me, that was really where I learned about pausing and reacting. Not everything needs a reaction. Not everything is that big of a deal, even though in the moment it feels like it is. So for me, that would be my biggest takeaway so far, actually, from therapy is not everything needs a reaction that is like of a high magnitude. Let's compare crying versus spiraling for a moment. I don't love crying, but we're going to discuss this and we'll get a bit on a personal level for a moment. I went through a period where I was literally crying every day. I was in a situation that literally had me in tears every single day. And then eventually I made a decision. I did not want to do that anymore. And as soon as I finally made the decision, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. But it took me a while to make the decision. Crying, I feel, is beneficial. I think that it helps you let it all out. I will never judge people for crying because I know what it was like in those moments where I was so upset and so frustrated, and tears were just my body's reaction to what I was going through. So when it comes to crying, I will never judge anyone for crying. Absolutely not. One benefit that I notice of crying, though, is that my skin is very clear after I have a really intense crying session. So I try to think on the bright side now, and at least when I'm done crying, I know that, in a few hours, my skin will be absolutely radiant and I don't need to wear makeup. Anyways, if you need some new thoughts just about how to reframe crying, so it's a sign of regulation. It is a sign that you need to kind of just release and let it all out. So it can actually, to a certain extent, in my opinion, help you to regulate your emotions because you're allowing yourself to feel something. If you, and I admit I'm guilty of this, if you suppress your emotions and you just kind of bottle them all up inside, sometimes they're going to come out at some point. And maybe when they come out, they're not in a moment when they should be coming out or when we would want them to come out. So sometimes just letting the tears flow helps you to simmer down potential future reactions for moments. Emotionally mature people cry. People who feel their feelings cry. It is okay to feel your feelings. It is okay to let them out in the form of crying. Spiraling, I feel like, is when you, and again, this is no formal definition whatsoever. I feel like it's when I start to go down that rabbit hole, kind of the rabbit hole that's going to take a while to return from. So it's not a moment of no return. It's just, it's going to take me a while to return from it. I start to question my decisions. I start to lose trust in myself. I start to second guess choices that I've made, decisions that I've made, things like that. And then for me, the spiraling just becomes very tricky to come out of because now I'm in this space where I don't trust myself anymore. Not forever, in the moment. But that's why, again, I'm going to say that pause to reaction timing is important. Because yes, you can cry, you can release, but you can also spiral and then not necessarily talk badly about yourself, but kind of lose your self-respect, lose your self-trust a little bit because now you're turning the situation on you when you maybe don't have to. So again, that for me, in order to not spiral, that would be where the pause comes in for trying to have a bit more of a controlled reaction to what is happening. So stepping away and just taking a breather. For me, let's talk about ways that I do that. So maybe it can help to give you an idea. First of all, I try not to touch my phone. I want my phone to like not even be near me. It's on silent all the time anyway. So if I miss your call, it's because my phone's on silent and it's not in my hand. But I try to not have my phone near me. Again, therapy has helped me with that though, to not grab my phone as a reaction and start texting my best friend, even though I love her. So I like to use my sauna blanket. I've talked about my sauna blanket. I'll jump in, I'll find a guided meditation, or I like the ASMR Reiki videos on YouTube, and I'll put that on while I'm in my sauna blanket. So that way, the video, whether I'm watching it or listening to it, it's already distracting me from what was upsetting me. I'm also getting incredibly cozy and sweaty, which is also distracting me as well. That's one thing I'll do. I journal sometimes. Sometimes I'll grab a book, but if I grab a book and it's a book that's kind of not necessarily self-help, but has more of a reflective tone to it, sometimes that makes me cry more. So it kind of depends on the situation. The other option is after taking a pause, I will call my best friend because I love her. But again, it all kind of depends on what the situation is. But if you're ever looking for ideas on how to help calm down or how to help kind of distract yourself from what's happening, those are my top picks. Also, sometimes I will go hug my dog. My dog is very good about sensing people's emotions. And when he sees that you're upset or that you're crying, he comes over and he gives kisses. So that's always a plus too. Let's come back for a moment and compare and contrast crying versus spiraling and what they can appear as. So crying can appear as letting emotions move through you, feeling sad without attaching a story. I know when I cry, sometimes it starts from one thing and then it goes into another. So, and then returning to your baseline. So when you're done crying, there's kind of, for me anyway, I feel like this moment of just like silence and reflection. Spiraling can be more of a catastrophic response. So, racing thoughts, crying maybe even harder, things like that. So at a much higher level compared to crying. It can be self-abandonment. So again, starting to not trust yourself, maybe talk badly about yourself to yourself. Impulsive behaviors, so texting people, making decisions that are spur of the moment, maybe avoiding people. Those can all be signs that you are spiraling. Let's talk about maybe some signs that you notice that are signs that you are growing and learning and becoming more emotionally mature. And again, if you don't feel like you're here yet, that's okay. These are just some ideas for what to talk about because the internet's not always so nice when it comes to topics like this. So number one is you recover faster. You don't feel it as deeply and you don't stay stuck in it for days on end. Again, that's something that I can personally relate to. I have learned, especially recently, you see things happening, things happen in the world, and it's okay to witness them and to not absorb them. It's okay to watch it from a distance and not take it personally. That is okay. Also, when something happens personally to you, it's okay if maybe in the past you took it really personal and felt really bad about it for a long time. It's okay if you don't feel that way anymore. It's part of the growth process. Yes, it means you still have feelings. Yes, you can still care, but maybe your reaction isn't as big, and that's okay. The whole concept of not being stuck for days, I noticed that is so helpful, especially when, I'll use filming this podcast as an example. If something happens and I stay stuck for days and it's a day where I know that I need to film, my episode is going to come out weird. I know it is because now I have this thought in the back of my mind where I'm letting what happened not control the episode, but now it's influencing the episode in a certain way that it's going to come out. And that's something where I learned where, okay, maybe every now and then I had to postpone a day of filming. But again, getting better with just controlling your emotions and learning, it has helped me to, okay, we need to put all of this aside for a moment because there's an episode that needs to be done, and it is too great of an episode for it to be overshadowed by what I'm feeling right now. So again, it's about recovering faster, but I also believe that it's about kind of putting aside something for a moment, again, to pause and then react later. Sign number 2, you don't make permanent decisions and temporary emotions. That is so important, and I truly believe that that is why it takes me a while to make a decision on something. So you wait before you respond to something, you sleep on it. Give yourself some time before you make an emotionally directed decision, especially when they're big decisions. And I mentioned before how I was crying every day when I was in a certain situation. I knew I needed to take time because it was a big decision that I had to make. So it's not that I was putting myself through all of that for like some, I don't know, way of enjoying it, I guess. I'm not really sure how to word that. It was not like a victim scenario whatsoever. That's not what it was. It's just I knew that when I made the decision, there wasn't really going to be an easy way to come back from making it. So I needed to know and I needed to trust myself that that was the right decision for me. I can officially report that yes, it was a really great decision, but in the moment I didn't know. And it's okay to not know. And that's very important, that it's okay to make decisions when you don't really know what the outcome is going to be. And if you don't know if you're going to like the outcome, but it comes to a point where maybe you're going to have to make that decision. So again, permanent decisions and temporary emotions. I made a semi-permanent decision a few weeks ago, but I thought about that decision for a long time before I even made it, and it's still like semi-temporary at the moment. Sign number 3, you can feel disappointment without needing a villain. You can't rewrite history. It's tricky if you feel that you need to demonize people to kind of cope. Some people will do that. But for me personally, I've never wanted to be that person. I'm not out here for revenge. I'm out here for me to live my best life. I feel like part of this comes also with taking responsibility for your actions and for your decisions. If I make a decision, there's no reason for me to try to make someone be a villain and blame them for making that decision, because then that's not really me making a decision. That's not me being confident in making a decision. I think that the people who villainize other people to make themselves feel better or to cope about something, those are not the people that I want to be around. Those are the people that I got away from. People who were constantly blaming and throwing blame on people and insulting people and talking about people behind their back. Those were the people that I wanted to get away from. So when I made a decision, there was no reason for me to try to put this on them, and I'm not going to continue to put myself through that when I was finally out. So they can do them, I'm gonna do me, and that's okay. There's no revenge, no demonizing, because then that makes me like them and I don't want to be like them. It's about feeling disappointment that maybe something didn't work out, but it's disappointment about it not working out, not about the people who were involved in it. Because again, do you really want to stoop to that level? That's my personal thought on that. Sign number 4, you take responsibility for your reactions. Again, this for me comes up in the form of life lessons. So if I'm thinking more about, okay, I feel really bad that this happened. I feel really bad about this situation that happened, but it happened. I can't do anything about it now. I did what I did in the moment with the information that I had. I made decisions based on the information that I had in the moment. Yes, I do wish I did a lot of things differently right now. I really do. I'm going through this uncomfortable phase where I'm realizing that I probably messed something up, but I can't really go back and fix it right now. All I can do is try to not it up again. So, again, it's more just about taking responsibility, being accountable, and treating yourself kindly when you are taking responsibility and holding yourself accountable for this. Number 5, you can communicate after you've regulated your emotions. So something happened, you've thought about it for a moment, now you can communicate. You're not trying to communicate when you're in the middle of a breakdown, when you're in the middle of spiraling. You're cool, calm, collected, however you want to call it, and then you can try to sort it out, or you can try to kind of go through what's going on and find a happy medium. It's more just about the ability to be able to communicate and say how you feel. Also, if we add to that, without necessarily having a reaction about what other people are saying as you're going through this process of communicating. It's also important that you're not communicating from an accusing standpoint. So you don't want to be accusing people of things. That's also something that is very, very important as well. For a moment, we're just going to discuss signs that emotional immaturity can appear. Just for a moment. And this is not for you to feel bad about, because I'm guilty of some of these things too every now and then. They still come up. It's not like you go through a process of growth and then never take a step back. It's, 3 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. So let's talk about the awareness of how immaturity can show up. So sometimes it can show up as having instant reactions. So something happened, now you've reacted immediately. Maybe the reaction was a bit more heated than you would have liked. Blaming others for how you really feel. Maybe you know that this is something that you need to work on, but you find yourself blaming others for it or not taking accountability for it. That is where it can show up as well. Avoidance instead of communication. So if you're just avoiding someone or avoiding something, there are, I'm not going to say people who deserve to be ghosted, but there are some people who do things where no matter how you try to explain it to them, they're just never going to understand how they were part of the problem. That's just how it is. There are people who are just going to never assume responsibility. They're always going to have their ego. They're always going to think that they're right and you're wrong. That's just how some people are. But we're going to just leave those out of there for a moment, because those are the people where I will not respond to them, because I know that the conversation is going to get me literally nowhere other than them intentionally making me frustrated. So we're not talking about them right now. We're talking about, maybe you need to have a conversation with someone who is a friend, or someone that you're dating, or someone who's an ex, maybe something along the lines like that. And you do need to have a conversation with them. Avoidance just tends to make the situation worse, or forever unresolved, or leaving the other person wondering what the heck is going on. And again, this is where, from the other person's perspective, if you're avoiding them, maybe they have no idea what happened. Maybe you think that they know, but maybe they don't know. They might not have any clue what's going on and why all of a sudden you're avoiding them. And then for the other person, that's going to make them spiral in a sense, maybe overthink in a sense, maybe wonder what they did wrong, and then start to kind of self-blame there. So if you were never clear with them, or you never communicated with them about what happened, again, you're not responsible for other people's feelings, but if you're just avoiding them for the sake of avoiding them, when a simple conversation could solve the problem or solve whatever miscommunication is happening, then I would say that is a bit on you. Just my personal thought on this. Needing constant reassurance. There are people who need a lot of reassurance. I know that because I'm one of those people where I have those moments where I do doubt myself, and I do need to sometimes have that outside person say, no, you can do it. Hello. I think that the more you practice, reassuring yourself, and the more that you do believe in yourself, the less that that tends to happen. But there are some people who do need reassurance. We're going to devil's advocate for a moment because you know that I love to do this when it comes to our conversations. So loud emotions do not necessarily equal, emotional depth. You're not more emotional just because you're loud. And if you're silent, you're not necessarily mature either. They don't really equal each other out. It comes to more about, are you having a balanced conversation? Are you having a conversation without letting your emotions get the better of you? So it's not necessarily, being loud doesn't necessarily get the point across, but being silent doesn't get the point across either. It's about finding that happy medium in there. There were moments where, yeah, I was loud about things, but at the end of the day, it was people really just, pushing my buttons. And instead of taking a pause to react and realize what was happening, I was reacting, right? And those aren't excuses. That's what was happening in the moment. So now when people push my buttons, I stay calm for a moment and then I respond instead of letting my emotions get the better of me. There's no judgment for people whatsoever when this happens. There are people who do it and they do know what they're doing. I truly believe that there are people who know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. And again, those are the people who are kind of excluded from this conversation, because when you know what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're manipulating people, you have nothing to do in this space of emotional maturity because you're choosing to act like that. So if that's you, you don't belong here in this conversation. Being silent, giving the silent treatment, that's also not a great option either. So I think that as you understand yourself a bit more and you grow throughout this process, you're going to discover the best way for you to communicate, because again, everyone is their own person. Let's talk about why being calm isn't necessarily the goal. We're looking for clarity to be the goal. This came up in episode 1 of the podcast, the pilot, where we talked about making assumptions versus clarity. Calm isn't always an accessible option, and calm isn't always an honest option. Clarity is knowing what you feel, what you need, what you will and what you won't tolerate. Clarity is being confident in your response. It's knowing that the way that you're about to respond is the way that you're going to be happy with. It's the elevated version of you or the growth version of you coming through in the situation. Clarity can lead to better decisions, not necessarily fewer emotions. You're still going to feel what you're going to feel, but it helps you to understand a bit more of what's happening and how you're going to get through it versus just reacting right away and right on whim. Clarity just helps you, I would say, from my experience, to know yourself a bit better and to also know with what you're going to be happy with later on based on your reaction. Strength can be found in self-containment, so controlling your emotions. Different than suppressing them. Controlling them is, acknowledging them, knowing that they are there, and then not just like squishing them inside so you can't feel them. You're not weak because you cry. You're not behind because your emotions still exist. You can feel without shame, without blaming yourself, without self-shaming. If you feel your feelings and you still show up for your life, that's emotional maturity. Emotional maturity isn't about being unbothered. It's about finding clarity in your emotions and being confident in your reactions, being able to react in a way that you're going to be able to be happy about. This episode is episode 1 of a series where every now and then we are going to dig deeper in the midst of other episodes that are a bit more unhinged or have some really fun and engaging guests in them. So stay tuned, because this is number 1 in this series where we are going to dig a little bit deeper, because If you follow me at the Banannie Diaries, you know that I am never going to be a one niche kind of gal. So we are going to touch on a lot of different topics. I have a lot of guests planned for this season, but we are still going to come home and talk about more of these personal conversations and intimate details that happen throughout life, because it happens, and sometimes it just helps to listen to a fellow baddie talk about it. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. You can follow She's Probably Talking to Other Guys on social media at SPTTOG Podcast. Make sure to follow along on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music, wherever you choose to tune in.